Following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communications Station.
Come on, Chicago, make some noise. MAPC. You know whether I'm right. You know, Lord, whether I'm wrong. Yeah, you whether I'm right or wrong. Yeah, yeah. You know whether.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is LaDonna Miller, and I am here with Our Journey. Our Journey is a show for mental health topics to make them realistic to us, all right, for an everyday life. I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Illinois and a few other states where I provide one on one therapy, couples, and group therapy. Okay. And so, what that looks like is just that one to one type of thing. But I decided to create the show Our Journey to make things a little bit applicable and realistic without maybe stepping into that virtual therapy office or even that in person therapy office. So that way you can maybe get a little bit of guidance. So each week, what we do here on Our Journey is we break down a popular topic or maybe a not so popular topics that may be a specific diagnosis on how you as an individual or maybe a family partner or spouse may be able to navigate with it with the particular diagnosis, or maybe something that's not a diagnosis but something that we may need help with on a daily basis to unpack and understand a little bit more. Okay. And so, for today's topic or this evening's topic, what we will be diving into is anxiety. What anxiety is, how we can maybe identify some signs and symptoms of just some general anxiety. I'm not going to hop into the nuances of defining each and every part of anxiety, but maybe some hierarching parts about anxiety. And then what we'll do from there, after we understand what the diagnosis is, how it looks, then what we'll do is we're going to dive into identifying ways which we as individuals can work with our partners or family members and support them once they may have that anxiety diagnosis. Okay, how we can be supportive as individuals to them. Okay. So first, I'll just go into what anxiety is, right? And so, just really from a professional background, what I would say is it's something that many individuals have, but for us to define it a little bit further, it's a diagnosis, right? It's usually it can be self-diagnosed, right? So you can definitely identify some of these signs and symptoms of anxiety. And I'm always going to recommend if you're feeling as if you're having anxiety or you have anxiety to identify some professional help. Okay, myself, or you can identify another therapist to be able to really navigate through that diagnosis so that way you can minimize many of those symptoms. Okay. So, some common signs or symptoms of anxiety would be feeling nervous or restless or tense, trembling, feeling weak or tired, experiencing some gastrointestinal problems, like some kind of, stomach, oh, my stomach, right? And maybe having difficulty controlling worry, right? You may have that excessive worry or a lot of worry that's kind of going on. You may not be able to control it, all right? Sweating, trembling. So, those are some of the physical signs or symptoms, having an increased heart rate, right? Having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom, like it's always the end, right? Something is coming up for you that you're not necessarily able to do, right? You may notice that you're breathing rapidly. Okay, those are some of the overarching kind of things like, okay, now, so if you've been able to identify that some of those are kind of going on, you probably have anxiety, but it's not the end of the world, right? You'll be able to manage and navigate what that looks like. What I'm wanting to go into now is maybe identifying a specific type of anxiety you might have, right? And so, again, we're not going to go into each specific one. There is a segment, or maybe a segment already, for some of the more specific anxieties, right? But I am going to do some higher level things today. So I'll mention it, give you a little bit of synopsis of it, and then we're going to move on to how we can support that anxiety. Okay. And so we'll go through some of the common ones, right? It's not popular because it's not like a competition or anything, but the common ones, okay? So agoraphobia is one. And so that's the type of anxiety where you're not necessarily wanting to do some particular thing, right? You're typically avoiding a particular place or type of thing. That's commonly depicted, right, as individuals who may not leave outside of their home, right? They may be fearful of going outside. That's a common way in which I can describe agoraphobia, partially because um, and if they have to go into those situations, they may feel trapped or maybe feeling out of their control. And being inside, that may be the thing that they can control. An individual with agoraphobia, they can control things that are inside of the home. Right? So they may be fearful of going outside or something of that sort of that nature. Okay. The next one is generalized anxiety disorder. I see several clients with this particular diagnosis daily, right? And so you may hear it called GAD. What that basically is persistent and excessive anxiety or worry, right? You worry about some of everything. It's not necessarily tied to a particular thing or circumstance or activity, but more so the thought or the notion of something coming up and then being anxious about it, right? Any ordinary or routine issues being the common thing that's going on for you. No actual maybe circumstance or thing that can be controlled, but more so that excessive worry about things coming up or going on for a particular person, right? Now that's one that I don't believe that we've gone into in our maybe 30 or so segments. So maybe that'll be one that I will dive into a little bit deeper of navigating generalized anxiety disorder. I'll make a mental note for myself and I'll go ahead and jot that down. And so being able to navigate that, right? And the next one that's pretty common, in which I'm seeing a lot of, is panic disorder, right? And so that is really the idea of repeated sudden feelings of intense anxiety, being able to having that fear or terror, which it peaks in moments, right? In minutes, and you are having those panic attacks, right? You may often feel impending doom, shortness of breath, chest pain, rapid or fluttering or pounding heart. So that's like heart palpitations, right? These panic attacks may lead to worrying about the problem happening again, or maybe you're avoiding situations so that way it doesn't come up for you. Okay. This one is kind of common in individuals when they go to the emergency room, right? This is one that may feel like a heart attack. All right. Some of the other anxieties, you may not have many physical symptoms, but with panic disorder, it typically has a lot of physical symptoms coupled with the psychological effects of the type of anxiety or the thing that's going on, right? And so when we're diagnosing panic disorder, it's typically a series of how often are those panic attacks and things coming up for an individual, right? 'Cause you may have panic, but you may not have panic disorder. But that's the nuances. Again, like I said, I'm not going to go into everything as we're going through the particulars, right, of the diagnosis. And so there may be something like separation anxiety that's common when individuals, like in childhood, right? Um, and being able to know, like, the child leaves, the parents leave the child at school. That's typically when that anxiety may be formulated, right? And where it's not been processed through. And it may trickle through adulthood, right? And that's something to navigate and to know and to understand. There may be specific phobias. I know that we went through phobias throughout the series, but basically having that anxiety or fear of a particular thing, right? So a social phobia, maybe a phobia of a particular physical element or type of thing, but being able to know maybe specific phobia, right? Like spiders, doors, bathrooms, maybe something of that sort, right? And being able to navigate what that looks like. Then there's the unspecified anxiety. That's one that I'm not typically diagnosing. However, I see a lot of it, especially in the beginning formulations of assessing individuals, or maybe there's a combination of some different traits that individuals are seeing, and it's a little difficult to actually pinpoint, that's this particular type of anxiety. All right. And so it's maybe some phobia, some there's some panic, uh, maybe some excessive worrying, but we're not able to necessarily pinpoint it to a particular thing because it's not meeting the criteria that we have, right? For diagnosing a particular disorder, right? And being able to navigate what that looks like is definitely going to be something important, right? So, what we're going to do is we're going to take a pause here. When we come back, what we'll do is we'll begin diving into how we can assist those family members who may have some type of anxiety. And then later on, what we'll do is we're going to gather some specific things that we as individuals, if maybe we're diagnosed with some anxiety, of how we can navigate and process through it. Hang tight, we'll be back.
There's another person inside of you. A healthy person. A fit person screaming to get out. Time Fitness will help you find that fit person. Time Fitness clients eat to live, not live to eat. 95% of you dream of a flat stomach but have no clue on how to make that happen. Time Fitness is the master of making that stomach disappear. Want to look younger? Time Fitness. Isn't it time you take care of you? Contact us now for a free 2-pound protein powder meal replacement, 2 free guest passes, 1-time free Time Fitness t-shirt. Each client gets personal training guide and workout journal. Time Fitness will help you live a healthy lifestyle and improve your quality of life. www.tymefitness.com 773-458-5084. Living out of town? No problem. Time Fitness can still work with you each month. Ask us how. Time Fitness. www.timefitness.com.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. And so, for those of you who may just be joining us, what we're doing is we're processing through what anxiety is and how we will navigate through anxiety, whether it be ourselves or a family member or spouse, right? And knowing how we will process, help, and support, right? And so far, what we've done is we've identified what anxiety is and the types of anxiety, some common types of anxiety that may be diagnosed, right? At a higher level, not too much, so you haven't missed a lot. And what we're doing is we are now what we're going to do is we're going to dive into how we can be of support to family members, right, or our spouses, right. And so I'm going to break this down into to 7 ways in which we can be supportive, okay, and being able to know and to identify some help, okay, and be of help, right? So the first thing or the first way in which you can be helpful to your family member or your spouse is being able to understand the differences in how anxiety manifests, right? Knowing that the anxiety, it does not look the same for everyone. Just because you may have that particular diagnosis, the ones that we've maybe gone over, that does not mean that that is something that is going to look the same, right? It may not even look the same when it comes up for an individual. Depending on the circumstance, right? Or depending upon the atmosphere or environment in which something is going on. And so, for us knowing that we may have our fight or flight, some even throw in fight, flight, or freeze, right? Being able to know that everything is different for everyone, right? And so sometimes individuals may pause, right, or freeze in situations or circumstances, and knowing like, okay, well, I felt that this was maybe a trigger, right, for us to be able to identify, hey, this is something that brings on some anxiety for them, but it may look a little bit different this time, right? And so for us, it's definitely going to be important to be sensitive and accepting of knowing, hey, that's probably some anxiety for them. All right. Not that we're making excuses for the spouse or the family member, but more so that way we're aware of maybe our own biases or our own understandings to know, hey, let's take a moment to understand that this is something that is going on, right? That this is probably some anxiety. They may be irritable, or maybe they're feeling scared, or maybe they're not having the opportunity to pay attention, right? Their attention span may be a little bit shorter just after having some type of anxiety come up for them, or they may be processing some anxiety, right? Not necessarily is all anxiety something brief. Right. It may be a day or so that an individual is anxious, maybe about something that's coming up or something that they've experienced, and it's not necessarily all like a panic attack, right? Where it's something that's short. It may be something that is triggered and they have that constant anxiety, right? Especially if it's someone who's maybe diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, or some of the anxieties that the thing isn't necessarily as short as maybe a panic attack, right? Or something of that sort. And being able to know and to understand that it looks different for everyone, right? We're all different, right? No one looks, acts, and behaves the same. So we should be able to understand and make sure that we're operating with that understanding. No one's anxiety is going to be the same, right? That's going to look different, even as we are navigating through the particular diagnosis, right? And being able to know that we're there and we can be of support, all right? And so the next thing is what I would encourage or for us to do is to be able to give that support based upon the attachment style, right? And so that's something that we've gone through a few shows ago, right? Of being able to know what attachment styles are. But if you're not maybe specific, or maybe you're not knowing what an attachment style is right now, I'll go through that kind of another segment, or you can go and identify that. But if you're kind of short on that and you kind of want to know, just ask your partner, how can I best support you at this time? Right? Or ask that family member. When you're anxious, how is it that I can best support you? All right. So you can have this conversation prior to you noticing that that anxiety has come up, or you can do it kind of in the moment. All right. The conversation will go something like, "Hey, I've been noticing that maybe you've been a little bit anxious, or that you're a bit anxious. I wanted to know how I could best support you during this time." All right. Now, There may be some particular task. There may be some things that they may want you to assist with, or they could absolutely say, "Just leave me alone," right? Like, I don't need any help. Nothing going on with me. I'm okay, right? And we as individuals have to be okay with the person saying that they're okay, and being able to navigate what that looks like for us and what that's going to look like as individuals as we are maybe processing through some particular instances or some particular things, right? Being able to know how we can do that, right? Some individuals may want some emotional support, right? There might not be any particular task or things, but depending upon their attachment style and how they maybe even receive care or receive love, they may want some emotional support, right? That may be something that's helpful for them, as opposed to those who maybe have a secure attachment, who they're not necessarily looking for emotional support, but they're more so looking for some tasks and maybe task oriented during those particular moments rather than looking for that emotional support or that care, right? Now, obviously, I'm giving you some examples, right, or some maybe some generalizations of what this may look like. But by you asking an individual, how can you support? That's going to be the best way, right? You're not going to say, well, I listened to Ladonna. Ladonna said that we should do this because I know that you have this attachment style, so I know this is going to be good for you, right? That may be helpful if maybe you ask them and they're saying like, "Hey, I'm not really sure," or they say like, "I don't know. You do what you feel is best," right? That's when you take matters in your own hands. They tell you to do that. But the important thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to ask them, "How can I best support you?" And then after we've gathered that response, that's when we're going to be able to have that moment to jump into what it is that we can do to be of assistance once they have let us know this is how you can assist, right? Now, the third thing that I would encourage you to do when you're trying to assist a family member or a spouse who may have anxiety or who have anxiety is to find ways to make make use of anything that you know, right? Like, so if you have some insight or you know something that's going on, find those ways to incorporate the things in which you know into assisting them, right? And so being able to know, hey, this is what has worked for us before, we should probably do this again, right? And so we typically know people's patterns, especially for spouses or family members who we're close to, right? Uh, Especially those who live in the home with us. You typically know patterns, you typically know when something is going on that's maybe anxiety driven or maybe kind of like their day to day type thing, right? And being able to know and to understand, okay, well, when this happens, this probably occurs, right? And being able to draw from those experiences or draw from that insight that you have that they maybe even let you in on or that you've kind of gathered from looking at patterns or looking at things and being able to move forward from there, right? Being able to identify, hey, that's something that's important. Let's get ready to do bop, 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 right? Being able to identify, hey, this is something that's maybe helpful for you or helpful for us to be able to move forward. Okay. And once we have identified that, we'll be able to do a couple different things once you're taking that insight that you have to then be able to move forward. Okay. Now, definitely, if you're going to do that, right? If we're going to draw from our insight, do things, I'm always going to encourage you to ask for that permission, right? Is it okay that if you're experiencing this, that I blank? Right? Asking for that permission. Sometimes people may not have that same type of insight as you, as an onlooker or family member or spouse, may have because they're in that anxiety, right? That may not be something that they are having the opportunity to move past or to to assist with, partially because they are in something, right? They're maybe inside of a particular um, anxiety attack, panic attack, or just inside of that thinking, that psychological pattern that's going on that is allowing them to be in that anxious state or state of being, okay, and being able to know. And since you've gathered that insight, right, you've been maybe taking notes, hopefully maybe not in a real notebook or something, but you've been assessing, you've been looking, you've been monitoring, right, you've been just with them. So you know, like, hey, when you're anxious, this is what goes on. I see that maybe I can be helpful in this way. And being able to move forward from that is definitely going to be something that is important for you, right? And so the next thing is what I'm going to want to encourage you to do is, if you're identifying or knowing someone who is anxious, you're going to want to assist them with their thoughts, right? If you notice that they may be in an anxious state, you're going to want them to maybe uh, assist them in alleviating some of those thoughts or minimizing some of those anxious thoughts, right? Not minimizing themselves, but the thoughts, right? And so the first thing that you're going to have to do in order to do this is, there's going to be a lot of education on your part, right? Being able to know different cognitive behavior models, which is great. You're right. You're here. You're listening to the show, right? This is something that's helpful, in which I encourage everyone to educate themselves all the time, no matter what the disorder or diagnosis is, because it's definitely going to be helpful as you are maybe cohabitating or very close to a particular individual when you're navigating through some things. Okay, and so for some individuals, it may look different. But what I'm wanting you to do is reading about anxiety, reading about maybe the particular anxiety disorder or diagnosis that they may have. So that way you're familiarizing yourself, right? And you can listen to me, like, right? I feel that I give some helpful information on particular disorders, or maybe you're wanting to go ahead and grab some books or grab some literature that's on the internet, right? Being able to browse, maybe look at some videos, some things that's going to be helpful. So that way you know kind of what's going on, right? What the particular diagnosis is, right? Now, another thing that you may do, which is going to be one of the solutions, right, or things that you'll do to help as an individual, is the individual would then have some therapy, right? So you may want to assist by going in even to the therapy. Don't worry, I am going to hop into how individuals can navigate through anxiety, right? That's going to be something that's going to come up after we take a pause in a little bit, right? So don't worry, we'll get to that, right? But for us to notice and to identify what some different things are for us, okay? So you may want to go to a therapy session with your family member or your spouse, right? So that way you can maybe gather some of the tips or strategies, or maybe provide even some insight to the therapist. I know for me as a therapist, sometimes I may request, right, a family member or someone to come into a session, but sometimes people are like a little bit hesitant, and I would love if maybe sometimes individuals would um, offer, right, coming, because it seems like maybe you're maybe in trouble if the therapist like, hey, can you nag so and so if they come to your therapy session? It's like, oh my gosh, like they have to come, right? So maybe offer. Right, and definitely check with the therapist. Please don't show up just to the session and it was not a conversation that was had between you, the client, and the therapist, or the client and you and the client relate that to the therapist. Because oftentimes there may be something that's being discussed, and then all of a sudden, right, an extra person shows up. It's like, that's not what we're planning to talk about today. We'll talk about something different because we have a guest here, right? And being able to know and to understand what that's going to look like. I'm laughing because that kind of came up for me about a week or so ago. It's like, oh, extra person here. It was fine. We were able to navigate the session, but that's definitely something to be considerate of, all right? Especially when I'm encouraging you to show up to a therapy session. Get that permission first. I think that's the object of today's topic. We're going to gather permission from the person who is anxious, right? And being able to navigate what that's going to look like, all right? And so typically someone who has anxiety, they're naturally biased to thinking towards the worst case scenarios, right? Like there's never optimism as the first thing all the time, right? They may have programmed themselves to seem optimistic or be optimistic about a particular subject or a particular thing, but continuous optimism isn't necessarily a thing, right? And being able to navigate what that looks like is going to be something that is important, right? So to help them gather maybe some perspective on what some things look like, what I would encourage is using a cognitive technique where you would ask some questions, right? So let me give you a few questions to consider. Hopefully you're taking notes. So one would be, what's the best that could happen? Right? We're trying to get rid of some optimism, right? So what's the best that could happen? What's most realistic or likely, right? Like what's most realistic that's gonna happen, or what's more likely to happen because of bop, 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 right? XYZ, right? Or what's the worst that could happen, right? We're asking those questions because we're wanting to know, okay, well, best case scenario, what happens? Worst case scenario, what happens? Because when the individual takes the moment to break down best or worst or both, they're able to see, I guess it isn't actually that bad, right? But sometimes they may need a little bit of some coaching, especially externally by someone who love and support them, as opposed to being in that moment, right? That those are some techniques that we do work through with individuals, right? Or as individuals with anxiety, to ask yourself that question. But that's typically when you realize that you're anxious. Sometimes you can do it, but once you're in therapy for a while, you're able to challenge those anxious thoughts. You're kind of processing through some things. You'll become an expert. You may not necessarily need another individual to assist you, but it's always something that's helpful, right? To be able to process through those questions, process through some things. And sometimes that's all you need is a person who's there to support during that thought cycle, right? Or that thought process, right? And so if your loved ones are anxious, because they were supposed to kind of hear from someone or, maybe get a call, something I know that's maybe kind of common, is that like parent was waiting for child to call, right? Like they were going to school or maybe traveling somewhere. And a common one is like, oh my goodness, there's been a crash. This has happened. That has happened. And it's like, okay, all right. Best case scenario, they're there and they forgot. Worst case scenario, there was a crash and they died. All right. Being able to know though and to understand, okay, but what can I do about it? That's gonna be the next thing. All right. Let us pause, right? Being able to know, like sometimes it might be the cell phone died, right? Something came up, and you're not necessarily sure or for certain as to what went on, right? Or what kind of came up for us, and being able to navigate and understand what that is going to look like. Right. But what I am going to caution you as you're kind of going through some of the cognitive things with the individual is being able to monitor yourself and be sure that you're not overly reassuring or overly kind of doing it. Right. We don't want to do it so much where it's like you're drilling a person, right? Or you're making them feel uncomfortable, which typically can maybe make them a little bit anxious, right? A little bit more anxious than they probably already were, right? Or are, right? And being able to have some of those anxious thoughts and anxious feelings where it's not necessarily helpful. It's maybe more harmful depending on how much of something that you do, right? So you're wanting to be of support, gently guiding, asking some of those questions, but you don't want to overdo it. Okay. So those are 4 of the ways. What we're going to do is we're going to take a pause right now. We're going to come back. We're going to go through the last few ways in which you, as a family member or a spouse or partner, would be able to assist an individual with anxiety. And then immediately following that, what we'll do is we're going to dive into and unpack what it's like for an individual, what we as individuals can do with anxiety to make things a little bit easier, lighter for ourselves. Hang tight. We'll be back.
The fall and winter fashion seasons are upon us. Time Underground Furs have every coat you need to be unique and stand out in the crowd. From furs, minks, leather, suede, vests with the fur, blue jean jackets with fur, cashmere, and wool coats, with over 350 coats to choose from. Rarely will you see 2 of the same coat. Quality coats and excellent customer service is first and foremost. Our entire inventory is wholesale priced. You never pay full price. Every coat is 25% or more less than any other store that sells fur coats. Why pay retail when you can buy the same coat for wholesale and save hundreds of dollars? Time Underground Furs also sells to other stores at wholesale prices. We also have very nice pre-owned, slightly worn furs. We lease our coats for all types of events and have 30-day layaway only. The mission is to take the coats out of our store and put them in your closet or store. Wearing a mink or unique coat transforms you to the best version of yourself, and everyone wants a fur coat. Time Underground Furs is here to make that happen. We do appointments only. Time Underground Furs, located in River Oaks Mall in Calumet City, 708-252-1434. That's 708-252-1434. Or check out our website at www.tymeundergroundfurs.com. It's time to purchase a fur from Time Underground Furs.
All right. Welcome back. This is our journey. So, for those of you who are just joining us, what we're doing today is we're processing and navigating through uh, anxiety, right? How we can support individuals, our family members, or spouses who may have anxiety, what anxiety is, and then we're going to process how maybe the person who's here listening, maybe you have anxiety, right? And you're wanting to know, how can I help myself? What things can I do to navigate the anxious thoughts that I'm having, right? Or maybe you've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, but you're maybe not in care, or it's been a while since you had some therapy or something like that, and you're wanting to know what it is that you could do to help yourself out, right? So we're going to get to that in a little bit of how you can help you. But right now, what we're doing is we're still processing through how individuals who are your family members or your spouse, how they can support individuals with anxiety. Okay. And so um, the next step, right? So we're going through 7 ways in which we can assist those family members who may have anxiety, right? So the next thing, so we're number 5 now, is I want you to offer some support, but I don't want you to take over, right? Like, yes, this is our journey, right? We're going this together, ours, right? It's the reason why we need to show our journey, right? It's the reason why we're all navigating this together. However, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to step in and you start doing more than the person who has the anxiety is doing, right? As some of the my younger clients will say, like, they was doing the most, right? I don't need you to do the most. I don't need you to be doing an extra, right? I want you to help out, assist, do all the things that we was talking about, right? But I don't want you to overdo. I want you to overplay your part in assisting the person who has anxiety, right? They have to want to do some things on their own, right? It's only so far in which we can assist the person that we can assist the person, rather, right? If they don't want to be helped, right? They want to be helped, they want to do some stuff, they can do that, right? And being able to know. And the reason why I'm saying that is because one of the core features of anxiety is avoidance, right? There's a lot of avoidance that goes on, avoidance of people, avoidance of situations, avoidance of a lot of different things, right? If there's something that you could think of, that's probably something that they're avoiding, especially if that's something that they may be anxious about, right? And so sometimes you might want to be like, oh, I want to get ready to help out because I see that they wasn't doing this. I want to help out because this hasn't been done or they're going to need some help with that. I want you to caution with a lot of that helping out, as the more that you're doing a lot of that helping, that is really enabling some of the different behaviors, right? So I don't want you to do a lot of helping, or we want to help, but we don't want to overhelp, right? Like for an example, sometimes they may be um, individuals may not want to like order like take out or go to the counter to make some orders, right? Like I know that there I have a client or two who's maybe a little bit anxious about going to a fast food restaurant or to a place to make an order, right? So they're always ordering something on their phone. They can order on the phone, they can order online, typically online, not necessarily having to talk to a person, right? Any way that you could do, or now they have at a lot of the different, especially the fast food places, different kiosks, right, where you can put it in and you don't have to do anything, right? And so one of the ways in which you enable is like, oh, I'll order your stuff for you. What is it that you want? And then you get there and they don't never have that opportunity to order. Every time y'all go somewhere, is you order. And they would like to have like they can't talk. Right. And so but you're doing it because they're anxious. Right. They're too anxious to talk, they're too anxious to have that conversation. Which is great that you want to be of help. Right. There's nothing wrong with wanting to help. But sometimes we can overdo, right? Now, like if you may be noticing that they're this really anxious, maybe having a panic attack, something of that sort, you may want to remove yourself from the restaurant, or you may not want to. You may want to fill in and help them out, right? Not every time are you doing something, are you trying to create a lesson or not do. But what we want to be cautious of is that every time we go someplace that you're not doing it, right? That every time we show up, you over there helping them out. They got to help themselves, okay? And that being part of the journey, right? Not that it's an easy thing to say, you know what, I know that's something that you're anxious about, but you're going to have to get over it. That's not necessarily the easiest or best way to navigate it, right? Being able to know prior to going or maybe having those conversations of what something is going to look like prior to it coming up, right? And once you have that, you'll be able to see exactly what something looks like, right? Once we're able to do that, we can navigate through particular things or particular instances to get things set up or all set up for us, right? Once a person is once you know kind of what you're dealing with or what's going on, right? And so the next thing, right, let's move on. So I'm looking at the time, we're going to be cautious of our time. The next thing is if you notice, right, or if someone has um, some anxiety, right, like if it's something that's serious, is maybe noticeable, we want to stray away from stigmatizing it, right? We're not wanting to identify or to really stigmatize what's going on, but rather be able to be there and be of support, right? Um, really allowing them to lead the way, allowing them to feel comfortable and not necessarily walking around, oh, because they got anxiety. Oh, is that your anxiety? Oh, right? Not necessarily um, walking around or being around and looking at the particular things that's going on and categorizing it, but more so being allowing the individual to feel comfortable with what's going on. So that way they're not feeling stuck or they're not feeling as if they are kind of trapped in a particular place by you placing a stigma on some of the actions or behaviors that's going on for them. You can still be supportive, right? I'm not telling you take away everything that we just went through. I want you to still be supportive, right? Or I encourage you to still be supportive, but more so being conscious of your overall perspective of what's going on, or maybe the way in which you're talking to other people about it, right? That's something that you're wanting to be cautious about, or even cautious as to how you are talking to the person who has the diagnosis uh, of anxiety, right? So that way they're not necessarily overwhelmed, or you don't want to belittle the individual based upon maybe some actions or some anxious thoughts that they're having. I know that's something that's common that we're wanting to stray away from, right? And being able to just be of overall support. Okay. The last and final thing that I'm going to encourage the other person doing, right? So the family member or spouse or partner that is assisting, right? And that's who I'm speaking to right now before I shift. I am going to shift in a couple moments. But the last and final thing that I'm going to encourage is for the individual to take care of themselves, right? You take care of you. Make sure that you are being present for yourself, right? As you are navigating and you're wanting to care for your spouse or your loved one, be sure to take a step back or to take a pause to know, to check in with yourself to say, you know what, I know that they've been a little anxious and I've been supporting in these ways. What is it that I can do for myself? What is it that I'm needing during this time as I'm being supportive? Because what we don't want to happen is that you're burnt out because you've been caring for an individual, maybe processing some of those anxious thoughts, and sometimes they might start seeming a little realistic to you, right? Or you're exhausting yourself or overexerting yourself to a point where you're not taking care of the things that you should take care of for yourself. You're not having a moment to be reflective or mindful about your surroundings, or truthful as to what's going on for you. So I am wanting you to do that, take that moment, be able to pause and know exactly what's going on for you. Okay. Now, the moment we've been waiting for, I'm going to shift now to us navigating through what it's going to look like for us as individuals who may have anxiety, right? What on an individual basis we can do to navigate or to make existing or living with anxiety a little bit better for ourselves. But small thing, I'm going to take a pause, right? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to process and navigate through that. And then that'll be the last thing that we'll do for today. So hang tight. We'll be back.
It's time to introduce you to Time, T-Y-M-E, the guy who is unique and multi-talented and confident. The mission, to satisfy clients and give them the best service possible. Time is a person who gives 100% and is always laser focused. It's from motivational speaking, acting, modeling clothes, fitness coach, a live radio show talking about living a healthy lifestyle for life. Time is also an author, and not to mention an ordained deacon. Time is also a businessman that sells furs, minks, and leather coats. Time is a role model for the world. His biggest talent? Giving. Giving is an art, and Time is a charity called Cheerful Giver. God loves a cheerful giver, which by now you have figured out that Time is very creative and loves working with his toolbox, aka his mind. If you need Time services, contact 773-458-5084 or email thebody1 at yahoo.com. TYME. It's time.
Right. All right. All right. Welcome back. This is our journey. For those of you who are just joining in, you have missed some wonderful things, but that's okay. You are here, and we're going to process and navigate through the last thing for today's segment. What we are discussing today is anxiety, how family members or a spouse can be supportive of someone with anxiety, what anxiety is. And now, finally, what we're on is identifying ways that we as individuals, if we have anxiety, or maybe noticing that we have some anxious thoughts or anxious thought processes, that we are able to navigate living, right? Living and thriving with anxiety. All right. At the top of the show, what I went through is letting us know that we can, anxiety is one of the things that you can maybe self identify or self diagnose. It is important, however, to maybe go to someone, therapist, psychologist, to be able to identify maybe the specific type of anxiety. So that way you can get some tips and tricks, and some tools in that toolbox to be able to navigate what that anxiety looks like, and maybe something that's a little bit more strategic and helpful for you. Right. And so knowing that anxiety is different for everyone, I did try to come up with some ways or some things that's most commonly helpful for some common anxieties, right? This is not going to necessarily be a catch all that's going to be able to assist everyone in a particular thing, but more so it's going to be helpful or useful for the individuals who are needing some support because they have anxiety, right? Or may notice that they're a little anxious. Okay. And so this is going to be something that's going to alleviate and assist. So I put together some steps, some tricks and tools to be able to assist. All right. So the first thing or the first way in which you would navigate the anxiety, I'm wanting you to keep physically active, right? If you're not, get physically active. Okay. Being able to, incorporate some movement each day. Many are saying that we should have about 30 minutes of movement about 4 or 5 days a week. That's going to balance off our dopamine and serotonin levels. Those are the chemicals in the brain. That's going to be something that we're going to want to do. Right. So getting physically active, if you are keeping physically active, right, incorporating that into the regimen. So that way we know that um, really chemically, right? The chemicals that we're needing, the chemical hormones that we're needing to balance out our brain for anxiety or being calm, right? That it's present, right? It's balanced. So knowing that that's there, being able to move forward. That's one of the ways in which we can navigate um, really the chemicals without adding a chemical, without adding some medications to do the balancing, right? So exercise, right? Keeping physically active. It doesn't have to be, whoo, I'm on a treadmill. Maybe walking, it may be dancing, it may be a plethora of things, right? You just wanted to get that heart rate up. You're wanting to get your body moving. When we're trying to send all the signals to the brain that has to be sent. So that way all the stuff is going on. Don't want to give y'all a real neurological type of explanation. If you want it, hit me up. Y'all know that's one of my favorite things. That was one of my majors in undergrad, neuroscience. So I love it, right? It's something that I can assist you with, right? But we're not going to go through all of that right now. We're just going to get these tips, right? So the first thing is going to get active or keep active, physically active. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to avoid or highly limit, right? If at all possible, right? We really want to avoid um, alcohol as well as recreational drugs, primarily because that's about to go and start going with the chemicals. I told y'all some stuff with the chemicals that's going on all inside of the brain, and you're going to kind of make it do some different things that we don't want it to do because that's adding in chemicals. That's other toxins, that's other chemicals that's now making the brain operate and function differently. It might have some kind of feeling to you. You might want to have to do something, but however, that's just what goes on neurologically. When you're adding those different chemicals in, it imbalances, it creates an imbalance for your brain that may increase some of those that anxiety and those anxious thoughts. And if we're trying to minimize them or kind of have them to be very, very low or non-existent, that's going to be something that you're going to have to eliminate. Is that alcohol and recreational drugs? Okay. We're also wanting to limit or cut out, right? Nicotine, tobacco, as well as caffeine, right? Those are also other substances that can affect, or that they do affect the brain, that may increase, or it's been proven that it increases anxiety or anxious thoughts. Right. So as we're finding things that we can do to eliminate or significantly decrease that anxiety. I'm wary on saying that we're eliminating anxiety, right? It's not something that can necessarily be eradicated. However, we can significantly decrease those anxious thoughts. All right. You can get them from being maybe multiple several times a day to maybe once a day or once a week or once a month, right? Like they're not completely absent, but they're significantly lower as we are processing or navigating through some things. So, the next thing that we're going to do is being mindful. I'm wanting you to incorporate some meditation or relaxation techniques. Okay, some visualization, some things that's going to create stress management, right? So it may be some deep breathing techniques. It may be some yoga. It may also be some counting, right? Some things that we would consider maybe grounding exercises or activities, right? So maybe counting backwards from 10 to 1. That would be an example of grounding, right? So 10, 9, 8, right? Most people it's a little bit more difficult to say your numbers backwards and forward, right? Not that it's the hardest thing. If you want a challenge, I'm gonna have you do the alphabets, right? From Z to A, and being able to identify how much of a challenge, right? I'm not wanting you to get more anxious by having something that's difficult, right? But if you're up for a challenge, that's definitely something that you may want to give a try to. If you're needing something a little bit more of a challenge, if you're noticing that anxiety is maybe amping up, or it's sometimes not necessarily the most helpful with some of the other grounding techniques or exercises that are used. Okay. The next thing I'm going to encourage is to make sleep a priority. Make sure you're getting the appropriate amount of sleep. Right. I'm not a sleep doctor, so I'm gonna told you I'm not gonna come and tell you how much sleep you're supposed to get. Right. But I need you to feel like you rested and get enough sleep so that way you can function. That look different for everybody. I'm not a sleep specialist. You can find what the internet say, go to your doctor. They let you know what they encourage you to have, right? What works. But I do want you to feel like you've rested and know that you've slept. Right? I ain't giving you a number. Just a feeling that I want you to have. I'm I'm the feelings person. That's why I'm a therapist. How do you feel? Right? And I don't want you to feel anxious. That was the point of tonight. And so the next thing I'm wanting you to do, I'm going to encourage having healthy foods, things that are going to what nutrition is, or what I would call brain foods, right? Making sure you have those fruits, those veggies, protein, whether that be kind of a meat or some type of protein substitute, or vegetable or nut or legume that's going to provide you with that protein. Those are brain foods, all right? Making sure you have those brain foods. Brain foods give you brain power, and it's not a joke. It's not, the person like, eat your vegetables, eat your fruits, have that protein. Like, yes, it does assist in your body doing what the body needs to do, but part of your body is your brain. Your brain can't operate if it don't have the stuff in there, and that's what I'm most concerned about, right? Like, go to the other people and they tell you what they want to do that's gonna help them, and they sell for what they're supposed to help you with. I'm supposed to help you with your thoughts, right? Help you with the things that's going on with your brain. If you have the right type of, no, if you have that brain food, you'll be able to operate and navigate, because it really is literally what it says, brain food. Okay. And being able to navigate. The next thing I'm going to tell you is to learn about your disorder that you have. If you're diagnosed with a particular thing, research it, study it, find ways in which you can navigate and work through it, right? Know the nuances as to what may be done, right? Be well versed in what's going on with yourself, right? Stick to your treatment plan. If your treatment plan say that you're supposed to go to therapy, you're supposed to maybe have some medication, you're supposed to do some exercise, you're supposed to do this, do it. Don't come up with the, ooh, they said it, but I don't want to do it. Okay. And that's why you have the issues that you have. Okay. Moving on. I digress from that because I could stay there for a little bit, but I'm not going to do it. Follow that treatment plan. It's the reason why they made a plan that's specific to you, for you to follow. Okay. The next thing I'm going to encourage is to identify triggers. What are triggers? Triggers are the things that come up for you that may have that anxiety to go on. Right. Knowing that you're anxious, like, oh, this happened, this is how I felt. that's something that would maybe have that anxiety to come up for you. Okay. The next thing I'm going to encourage you to do is journal. Journal. Yeah, that's going to be the second thing that I'm going to encourage you to do other than go to therapy is to keep a journal. All right. Your treatment plan is going to always probably include therapy. So I'm going to tell you today to go to therapy. Do your treatment plan. Journal. Right. And last but not least, I'm wanting you to socialize. Have some opportunities or some moments to be with individuals, to socialize, whatever that looks like for you. It looks different for everyone because everything looks different for everyone because we're not the same people. So socialize though, having some time to be with those family members, your spouse, some friends, some outside people, maybe outside of the home, and creating those bonds and being able to navigate through what things would look like. Okay. I do hope that this was something that's helpful for everyone. And we'll be back again next week with our journey with another mental health topic that we'll dive into. Hope all is well. You have a great rest of your day.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ. WVTC